first speaker. Honored to introduce, he's CEO of WIA. He's a longtime friend of the South Wireless Summit. They're the ones that helped launch this event back in 2012 in Tunica, Mississippi. I want to bring up to the stage Jonathan Adelstein. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Steve, and good morning, everybody. So good to see so many folks here, so many friends and folks we've seen. Steve does such a great job. Let's give a round of applause for Steve. He always infuses this conference with Southern hospitality and a nice warm feeling. We appreciate that. Not only great to be here with so many friends, but it's great to be out of Washington, especially these days. And of course, I love Nashville, being an amateur, very amateur musician myself. Great music, great food, great people. And following me, we have Jay Brown here this morning from Crown Castle. You may not realize, but if those of you who are members of WIA have probably got your ballot, and you've seen that Jay is on the ballot to join our board of directors in May. So this is going to turn into a campaign rally in a few minutes. We're going to set up some votes. You know, being back in the South reminds me of a story I read about recently in the news. Archaeologists were digging in New York about down 10 feet, and they found traces of copper cable dating back 150 years, and they concluded that they already had telephone service in New York 150 years ago. Then some archaeologists in LA dug a little deeper. They went down 20 feet, and they found cable, and they concluded that they had advanced communications in LA for 200 years. So they beat New York. And then there was just this week, I was reading an article out of Jackson, Mississippi, that there was a guy, amateur archaeologist, who was digging 30 feet outside his pasture in Poplarville, Mississippi. So this guy, Bubba, self-taught archaeologist, reported that he found absolutely nothing. And he concluded that Mississippi had already gone wireless 300 years ago. So that's where the origins of the summit are. Anyway, great to see so many members of the Wireless Infrastructure Association and so many former members after that joke, I'm afraid. As you know, WIA is the only association really dedicated to this industry, really to fighting every day for all of you, making sure you get what you need. We are hearing about some progress finally, where things are picking up a little bit. We've had a bit of a trough I think we've been in, but we're hearing good reports from the carriers that activity is picking up. And we're here to talk about how to help you get those networks built, how to deal with that additional work that's coming on. I mean, it's a tough job you all have, not just the basic construction part, but then layering on top of that the high-tech wireless systems that are involved with other skills. But the country's counting on you to make sure that we can deliver 5G for the future, that people can get what they need. And my team, the WIA, hears every day from all of you about the obstacles you face. And we're working hard to make sure that we can help you. We're really working hard with government. We're your voice in Washington. I don't think any other association has done more for this industry in D.C. I've spent more time than I care to admit in government before I came to WIA. And one of the things I learned was that government can cause real problems. As a matter of fact, I might have caused a few myself over the years. But I would never say that as a result, I'm the only one that can fix it. But I did pick up a thing or two about how government can encourage the rollout of new wireless technologies. You guys working with not only the federal government, but state and local governments as well, to try to ensure that these technologies can get deployed more quickly and efficiently. Our members include the carriers, the infrastructure companies, and the businesses that service them. So we're convinced that we can do a lot more. We've gotten Congress already to enact a law that allows co-location by right on existing facilities, so you don't have to go get a new zoning hearing done. Then we've got the FCC to put forth the strongest possible rules to implement that. And we've led the way on creating shot clocks and other processes to speed the deployment of infrastructure. And now we're really focusing on state legislatures across the country in bills to streamline infrastructure siting on a statewide, because it's all local after all, especially focused on the rights of way. And hopefully our work has saved you all some money. I know we've saved a lot, untold millions from the industry in general, but there's still a lot more to do. I mean, if you're out there fighting every day in the trenches, you need a predictable business environment. You need to know if you're you're gonna make investments, if you're gonna hire up, that you have rules of the road that aren't gonna change in the middle of your job. And I'm here to make sure that all levels of government work well together with industry. That way we can really achieve our maximum potential to contribute to economic growth and development of the entire country. So we're working with not only, bureaucrats in Washington, but in state capitals throughout the country. I'm going to start with the administration. We have a new administration in Washington, and Trump has been talking about infrastructure. So we changed our name just in time to the Wireless Infrastructure Association, PCI, because infrastructure is our middle name. We're thrilled to hear the administration talking about it. So much enthusiasm about building it up, and when we talk about it, nobody knows yet how it's going to be rolled out. We brought on consultants, people are trying to figure out what's going to happen, and it's not clear yet, but one thing that there is a consensus about, we hear this both in the administration and in Congress, is that infrastructure for broadband should be included. There's a particular focus on rural areas, but in general, what we expect is that there's going to be a regulatory component of this. There's not probably enough money to go around. The Democrats did float a proposal in January that includes $20 billion in money just for broadband infrastructure in rural areas, which can certainly benefit many areas in the South. But in the end, we're not sure whether that's going to be included or how that's going to pan out. But we do know, we've heard across the board, for example, I heard from the chairman of the Commerce Committee, Greg Walden, who told me that, we can give you $100 million, or we can save you $100 million in regulatory costs, and either way, it's $100 million for the industry. So I think they're looking at it that way. We want to make sure that what's in that package really makes sense and does what you want. Another area the administration is working on is with the Commerce Department, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration is the administration's chief lobbyist and sort of internal voice on broadband. And they've got a proceeding out where they're exploring the role of government in fostering the Internet of Things. It's teed up broadband infrastructure issues. We weighed in at WIA. We found that a lot of our suggestions made it into the white paper that you can find on NTIA's website. And we're also working with NTIA and their Connected Communities initiative, because I think that smart cities are really a big part of the future of this industry. And so we're working with those cities on broadband plans and how they can reduce barriers to infrastructure deployment. And we're working with Congress as well. A lot of work in Congress. We hired our first lobbyist a couple years ago, just in time, down the street from the White House. We've got our chairman, many of you know Tam Murray, who's our chairman right now, from Community Wireless Structures. And he testified in front of Congress just last week in the House of Representatives. He stressed how important it is for the federal government to streamline the deployment of broadband. He supported a bill in Congress that involves siting on federal lands, like a lot of property here in the South, where it's almost impossible to get anything built. And he also talked about addressing the costly delays we're getting from tribes. We're not talking, of course, about building in tribal areas, but the fact that tribes are holding up projects way outside of their historic areas, charging higher and higher fees, and making it more difficult for us to get the job done. And he talked about working together responsibly. The WIA, I think, makes progress because we don't just say, let's roll over the localities. We want to work with them in partnership and do it in a responsible way. So we help to spearhead an industry consensus about small cells, saying, you got to define it. You can't just put a 120-foot pole up in the right-of-way and think nobody's going to notice. If you're going to have a small cell, it ought to be limited in height to 50 feet. And that way you can get localities to agree. And we're seeing now in states across the country that we're making progress on that. There's also another bill in the Senate called the Mobile Now Act, and that's already been marked up out of committee. We expect that's going to help us on federal lands as well. We have a real problem in Congress with rural tower marking. I don't know if you heard about this, but Congress passed this provision to require rural towers between 50 and 200 feet to be either painted or marked. These are maybe 10,000 communications towers across the country. Just unprecedented, really a complete waste of money. Because the idea was there's these little towers that go up real quick for weather and for checking out the wind, so they can build a wind tower called meteorological towers. And that's what the crop dusters were worried about. This whole crop duster association just didn't tell anybody, snuck a little provision in the bill that made us paint really, thousands and thousands of towers around the country. And as one senator told us, Senator Inhofe from Oklahoma, said, he's a pilot. He said, if you you don't know where a cell tower is, you should be in the plane if you're flying around like that. So he's going to help us get rid of it. A lot of folks are going to help us fix that. We have to get Congress to undo that. And we were pleased that FCC Commissioner Michael Riley penned a blog about this recently, saying this is a really hundreds of millions of dollars spent by the industry with no benefit. So we're hoping to get that fixed. A lot of work in front of Congress. And of course, we're always working at the FCC. A lot of fighting for the industry going on there, and we're making steady progress. We have a new chairman of the FCC, a friend of mine, Ajit Pai, who is really tremendous. You might have heard him at our show a couple years ago, and we're trying to get him back again this year, trying to see if the schedule will allow it. He is a tremendous advocate of getting more infrastructure built, and has worked hard within the FCC to try to do that. He was involved last August when the FCC amended its rules to streamline the historic preservation review for co-locating small wireless facilities. And now he's working on a major initiative to reduce barriers to infrastructure deployment through what he calls a streamlining deployment of small cells infrastructure proceeding. There again, the FCC, we think, is queued up to require localities around the country to streamline the siting application process. He's asked us for how can we help, what can we do to find ways to, what are the pain points for the industry to make it easier? And we expect that that's actually voted on in April. That's how high on his agenda infrastructure is. That as soon as he can get this thing done, he's doing it one of the first major acts as the new chairman. Another signal that he's serious is he's creating what's called the Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee that will provide advice on how to accelerate deployment of high-speed internet. We're hoping to get some of our members on that group, and he's also prepared to eliminate net neutrality rules that the carriers are concerned is slowing down their potential ability to generate new revenue streams, the stymies innovation in their plans and how they're doing zero rating plans. So we're excited about that. So the bottom line is, we're seeing the government asking how they can help us. You don't see that every day out of Washington. So we're kind of a special industry. We're a privileged group that we got White House, we got Congress, and the FCC all saying they want more broadband in this country. They all see the clear need to remove roadblocks and to streamline the process, so we couldn't be in a better position. Our industry's putting up billions of dollars in capital, over $30 billion a year to build these networks. And I think these policies that we're talking about coming out of Washington, the states and other colleges are going to allow for even greater investment. And speaking of the states, we're working with you, with a lot of the state associations on the need to promote the industry's interests in state legislatures. Because on the local front, we need to really get down there. They don't always necessarily listen to everything coming out of DC, but when a state passes something that involves zoning or siting, the localities really are very respectful. And we need to respect localities. As we go into these states, we're talking to representatives of localities about legitimate interests in what they need to do to protect their communities, but not when they get unreasonable and push beyond reason. So we're supporting legislation that will remove regulatory barriers, reduce delays, rationalize fees, we're seeing are very high sometimes, and to establish height limits that set what a small cell is and what it isn't. We've also worked in a lot of states to update pole attachment regulations for helping our members get access to utility poles at fair rates, terms, and conditions. Streamlined pole attachment rules are really key. I mean, of course, they're going to help us get broadband out there. We got all this existing street furniture and infrastructure. We need to use it. These rules are really key to the deployment of small cells and also, of course, preparing for 5G. And speaking of 5G, we have I think, a ramp up. You're already seeing a lot of the building that's going on. Intensification is in preparation for 5G. We'll hear more about that, I think, on upcoming panels. But we're watching closely what the industry is doing and involved as best we can. Verizon, for example, formed a 5G technology forum, and they're including in that the luminaries such as Apple and Nokia and Qualcomm, Samsung, Cisco, Ericsson, Intel, and LG. In the second half of 2017, AT&T, Qualcomm, and Ericsson announced they plan to begin 5G interoperability testing and over-the-air field trials in using 5G radio specs. So this is pretty exciting. The goal is to rapidly commercialize this. We want to lead the world in 5G, but none of this technology can reach its real potential and the people that we're trying to reach without exponentially increasing wireless infrastructure deployment and the backhaul to support it, because 5G requires fiber backhaul and front haul. And we already know, to keep up with the demand we're seeing now, and especially as we see going forward, that we need to bring antennas closer and closer to the end user. And this is changing how we build networks both inside and outside. The massive growth in the number of connected devices and machines, I think, are going to strain the capabilities of the infrastructure we have today, which is good news for all of us in this room. One of our members, Nokia, predicts that tens of millions of new devices and machines will come online. You hear different estimates and questions, and how many, it's billions, is how many billions? Is it tens? Is it 50? You see estimates going higher than that. Supporting these devices is going to require huge investments in infrastructure, no way around it. So we're on the precipice of this big evolution in 5G. These are going to be really low latency networks, extremely high throughput everywhere, including at the edge of the networks. As consumers move, they'll be able to access enormous amounts of data. We're probably 3 years out from a widespread rollout of this, despite some of this early testing, but fortunately a lot of the mobile applications work on today's 4G networks, and 5G is designed to be layered right on top of 4G. But there's a lot of things that are going to require 5G, like autonomous vehicles that are in need of this extremely low latency and no loss of data rates during congested periods. So we need a lot of new thinking about infrastructure design, deployment management. We're thinking about that at WIA. We formed the Innovation Technology Council. I see a lot of folks down there and many others who've contributed enormously to that effort. And what we're finding is, of course, we need more cell towers, we need more access to poles, we need more antennas of all sizes to attach to structures of all sizes. And we need the all-important fiber networks that connect all these wireless technologies. Something that I think Jay Brown and the Crown Council figured out well ahead of the curve, and are positioned to deliver on that. Data delivered from car to traffic light or from pedestrian to car doesn't work if the mobile networks aren't in place. So we need a lot more wireless infrastructure to make that seamlessly given to consumers where they need it. It's not going to be easy, but we're in a good place to meet that challenge. You know, when people talk about the Internet of Things, I always say the Internet of Things requires a network of reality. And that network is going to basically deal with congestion. The beauty of the headnet is you put the cell where it's needed, where there's a capacity issue. And all these different devices are really getting more and more precise in terms of where they deal with holes in capacity. This means combining macro sites with smaller base stations and using a range of radio access technologies like LTE and Wi-Fi and any future technologies that are coming on. Our networks need every bit of technology they can to meet the capacity demands. And virtually everybody you talk to talks about the need for extreme densification. This example here on the slide, you've got one macro tower there, but if you can supplement it with a light pole and a rooftop, eventually you can meet demands, particularly in these dense areas, but increasingly throughout the country. We're hearing a lot about small cells. We've been hearing a lot about it for a while. I think it's finally maybe about to take off, or more and more demand for those, and I think a shortage of the workforce to actually deploy these things. We at WIA are looking at how we get to build this new nature of networks, and do we have the skills in our workforce to deal with it? And we're finding increasingly that we don't. So WIA is working on helping to deliver to the industry the kind of training and apprenticeship opportunities that we need to keep up with that. These transitions from LTE to 5G are going to take time and money, but we are going to have to meet the demand. It's hard to do it when carriers are having a price war. We keep seeing these bills being cut in half and better deals, but in the end, we've got to build 5G networks on very thin margins, so we can't afford to have the industry saddled with expensive regulations to do that. And we can't afford to wait for spectrum options or 5G. I mean, right now the demand's going up considerably. As a matter of fact, it's set to increase 500%. You've probably seen this chart before over the next 5 years. Who would want to be in a business where you've got a 5% increase in your product demand foreseen over the next 5 years. And these estimates have consistently been a little bit low. A lot of that's, of course, coming from smartphones that account for most of the wireless connections today. But the number of machine-to-machine connections is also increasing. So we have Internet of Things driving demand. I've said the past year, I think last year we talked about wireless data crunch, that some of you may have heard it described as a spectrum crunch in the past, but now it's not about spectrum. Spectrum is just really one of many ways that you can get more data. Infrastructure being probably more important. I'll talk about that in a minute. And when you're here in Music City, what's driving a lot of this is video. We have Nashville-born native country music star Josh Turner, who's got 35 million views on this video, for example. And that's a good thing for our industry, not only because it drives demand, but because Josh Turner is coming to our show in Orlando in May. So don't miss that. We may even get the wireless industry folks to be the opening act for it. Stars like Josh Turner really drive, I think, a lot of this demand over YouTube or other video platforms. What's really startling, though, is that this research we convened at WIA is showing, we got it from IRG, showing that more of those views on YouTube are on smartphones using cellular networks. So people aren't just waiting to get back to Wi-Fi. 20% of people surveyed said they stream videos even if they're away from home or not connected to a Wi-Fi network. So all this is part of this mobile-first lifestyle that's driving our business. People can't wait to watch highlights of the game until they get home, and they obviously can't wait to watch Josh Turner until they get home either. We talked a bit last year about the 3 dials that, of course, in the form of those of us who play using the form of a Fender amp dials here. But there's really 3 ways you can get more data throughput. That's through more spectrum. We're not seeing a lot of that. Increased technological efficiency, which I talked about, the move from 4G to 5G, for example, or more wireless infrastructure, densification. All 3 are essential, but wireless infrastructure is really, of the 3, I think the most important one going forward. It immediately addresses the data crunch as soon as it's deployed, and of course it takes time too. So as I've said, you're in trouble when your quick solutions infrastructure. But it's infrastructure that is causing the most. And in the past, of course, it's been densification. A lot of you are very familiar with it. You live densification every day. So if you have three cells, and you have one macro in the middle, you start adding more to that cell, you get a lot more capacity. This is what's not only driving the future, but it's driven the past. I really talked about these $3 for all. What I was fascinated with was that an analysis was just validated by new research from Nathanson. They looked at this historically and believe this will be the case going forward, that in terms of spectrum reuse or infrastructure has contributed the lion's share over the last 45 years of the increase in capacity on mobile networks. You hear all this talk about spectrum and all these great new technologies, but really it's been the brute force of building networks that has contributed to the ability to increase by 1 million the amount of data that is available over wireless networks. And Nathanson believes that trend will hold going forward. We don't see a lot more infrastructure going on. We've kind of we've maximized what we can get out of 4G networks. This is really good news for our industry. We might have seen a little trough, but in the long term, there's no way around densification. It is going to be the solution. And 5G networks is, we know it's going to be even more and more critical. So we need to educate policymakers about that. We're trying to let them know. They don't always fully appreciate the role that infrastructure plays. They think that it's some kind of magic that makes these devices work. But in fact, it's all the hard work that you folks do every day building out these networks in the field, cell by cell, that does it. And they sometimes see us as a revenue stream on mobile. And we all know that margins are really tight. It's not, you see all the commercials and you think, well, this must be a real rich industry. Well, it's those very commercials that are actually making it harder and harder to earn the amount of money they need to build out networks. We're talking about 4 or 5G networks. A lot of analysts think they're just isn't enough capital to build that out. It's going to be stretched. So we need to work together to deal with this wireless data crunch. We need to do it efficiently, whether it's towers or small cells and DAS. We need to remove these regulatory obstacles because we don't have any capital to spare on being held up in delays and costs. We need to turn all those dials up to 11 so that our industry can meet the challenge and benefit the entire economy. And you're the ones here who are going to deliver that network of reality. We're not working hard for you in the states or capitals. We're working to deliver valuable industry insights and business connections. Our show is the best place to do that. Of course, this is a great show to do that as well. And we appreciate the partnership we've had with Steve and the whole team here at this summit. But we invite you to come to our show in Orlando. It's coming up May 22nd to 25th, bringing together the whole ecosystem. And we have a new thing we initiated last year called the Supplier Diversity Summit. So small businesses, whether they're just a small business, whether they're owned by a veteran, a woman-owned business, a minority-owned business, all are welcome to come to this. And basically the day-long event features one-on-one meetings with companies like Crown Castle's agreed to participate in SBA, American Tower, the carriers. We'll send their procurement officers. So if you're in a small business and looking to provide an opportunity for these major contractors to put out work, that is something that we would invite you to participate in. So look forward to seeing you in Orlando. Make it to the Diversity Summit if you can. It's so great to be here in Nashville. Thanks for having me out. Appreciate it. We have time for questions, Steve, or we got just don't know if any questions or comments or brickbats or give me a hard time. We figure it all out. Oh, great question. FirstNet, yes. FirstNet, we think is finally about to launch. It's going to be a great opportunity for the industry because basically it's a whole new bill overlaying what we have today. So it's all new business. It's all like gravy on top of what we have. Of course, it's been involved in a lawsuit by Rivada, which was thrown out, but Rivada's appealing. There's a lot of people think that it's about to end. When you talk to the people that are on top of the litigation in D.C., we think in the next few weeks, hopefully we'll have a final deal. FirstNet board's prepared to meet and give it to somebody. I think we all know who it's going to be or have a good idea. One of the major carriers seems to be queued up to get that, and it's going to be great for their business. Not only do they get $6 billion to build it out, but they get 20 megahertz of new spectrum that they need to build out, so-called D-block. So it's going to be a lot of work for everybody here. We're working now on some concerns about making sure that there isn't a need to harden the existing infrastructure, because that can slow us down quite a bit if a locality has a existing ordinance that requires central communications to be, for example, Class G, Rev G Class 3 towers, which are basically, there's very few in the country that meet that standard. We're not going to be able to build those things. So we've worked with that on the first end on the national level. I'm afraid we might run into a little bit of an issue on the local level with that, which we're starting to figure out right now. We're working through that. Other than that, we think, if we don't run into those troubles in localities, we get them to clear the way. We don't have to do it locality by locality. We can get this thing built pretty quickly. And that's just going to add to, I think, the increasing workload that we're seeing out in the field. Really good for the industry, good for public safety. I've actually been working on that for 10 years trying to get that done. It was in 2007. When I was a member of the FCC, we tried to get the network built. We put it out for bid, and basically nobody bid on these 20 megahertz of spectrum because we loaded it up with too many requirements for public safety. We're trying to be too good to it. It's got to be a balance. It's got to work for industry and it's got to work for public safety. So I think the contract that's pending now is going to work for both sides. And finally, our first responders who are putting their lives on the line out there every day for us are going to have the nationwide interoperable broadband network that they deserve.